Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Delusional Talks with You&I, aka your host Clara. I hope everybody's been having a good week. For this week's episode, I wanted to talk about something that I've talked a lot with my friends about, and I just noticed, I was just thinking about how I can improve myself and things that I'm not really good at doing as an adult, I guess, now that I'm 22 and I'm adulting, I've been feeling all of these things. I've been noticing that I have really trouble being confrontational and just being direct about my feelings and saying no. I was talking to my friend the other day and he was telling me things that's been happening in his life and his updates and stuff, and then he was in this situation, and basically moral of the story, it was just he needs to be able to communicate his boundaries, and that there are certain things that he needs to be able to say no to, because in the end he regrets it heavily and it becomes a big burden and it just doesn't help either party. And then and so then I was just whoa, okay, pause. I also have that issue. And I was just thinking about, I don't think I've been able to master it yet. And I think I have a lot of trouble doing it, because I don't know, I'm just not really good at saying no. And I tend to do this thing where if somebody asks me for something and I don't in the moment, okay, the problem with me is that I realize not only do I not know how to say no, I don't know that it's it's a boundary of mine. Do you know what I mean? It's such a subtle request that at the moment I'm just oh yeah, of course, and then I look back, I'm damn, I think I need to be able to say no more often, because I need to stop just giving so much. Not that giving is a bad thing, I think in life you need to have a give and take mentality, and not everything is transactional also. So there's so many times where you need to be able to just give, and if that's such if, I just it's a big personality trait of mine. I think I got it from my mom, where she just constantly gives to so many people, and she never receives anything back. And sometimes we just feel good about that, we just like to give. That's our our love language. And yeah, but I just don't know how to say no. And I also don't know when it's breaching a boundary. I think in college I started to learn more about what boundaries were, because I got exposure to a lot more people versus high school or elementary school. And I came from a place where I grew up in a very small townish, so wherever you lived, you go to the same schools, elementary, middle, and high school with the same people, unless you move or you wanted to go to school outside of the area. And so basically, I think I was so I didn't have much exposure to different people as much. Also, you're young, so what exposure can you actually get? So as I went into college, I noticed when people started to take advantage of my kindness, or honestly, no, it was the people around me that would call other people's actions out and tell me that's not okay. Yeah, and so I was just oh, I I also I did not have much self-awareness in the part that when I always justified my niceness as oh yeah, I'm just being nice, of course, this is something I always want to give, what is wrong with that? But then I think I always struggled with that fine line between being too nice, and then getting, and when to set boundaries without being rude about it. Because I used to always get self-conscious that if I set boundaries or if I'm rude about it, it comes off mean, and people will think of me as a mean person. And I think I never knew that how to differentiate that, or how to act on it. So then it ends up me just being constantly just way too giving, and then getting stepped on. But I'm not aware of that until I look back and I'm oh, okay, I need to learn. I think it's important to be nice, but also be able to set those boundaries and be able to stand your ground and not tolerate disrespect. Because guys, my delusional ass here, like, is very, very, very like, no, it's okay. Like, no, they're just learning, or like, you know, like, no, they're just so young. It's okay. Like, I just want to be nice and I want to like help them. I want to change them. That used to be me a couple years ago, and honestly, up until recently, like, it hits you in the ass, and it just like, I had this whole revelation on that, which I will get into. But one thing I wanted to talk about specifically in this, like while we're on the topic, is like how to set boundaries with friends, because I think, like, also while I was in a relationship, that was something that I had to learn. And like, honestly, being in a relationship taught me so much about like boundaries, like how to say no to people, or like what I wanted in not just like romantic relationships, like in platonic relationships, what's right and wrong. And I felt like I was just, like I mentioned, like so used to giving, I never really knew how to receive, if that makes sense. And so I was talking to my roommate about these things, and like, we like, cuz she shined a lot of light on this aspect of how to set boundaries with friends, because we are like both so afraid that our friends would like think weirdly of us. Like, no, like, would like we did something super wrong by saying no, and we feel like such a bad person. But I think at the end of the day, it was something I really realized, especially through my friendships, like my genuine friendships, is like, you can say no and they will 100% respect it, no matter what, because that's a boundary of yours. And if they respected you and they really cared for you, they would know, like, oh, no is like your way of showing like your opinion, and in that way is you wanting them to care about it. And I really take on this mentality, like, that you need to be direct, you should be able to be direct, and as much as you give, you should also be able to receive. Like, the hard thing about like any form of relationship is that it's a two-way street. You can't just be the only one giving. And sometimes, like, I think that's something that always happens when you want something so badly, or you want to maintain this friendship so badly, and then it kind of makes people tunnel vision in that this relationship is not good for you, because like, you are so hyper focused on that, this, like, either that you've known them for so many years, or like, they play a big role in the social realm that you're in, especially in high school. That's like a big thing, like when you're in a group of friends, and the group of friends don't really treat you well, but you just want to be a part of that group, so you do whatever they want to do, but as a result, you lose a lot of your own self-respect and the things that you want. And then it starts going into the cycle and this loop of like you constantly giving everything just because you want to be in that. But I think like something so important that you'll realize is like those friendships, I think, are not sustainable, and they don't last until like college, or like into your like adulthood, nor should they, because you don't want those type of people in your life. You know what I mean? Like, you want to be around people who lift you up instead of drag you down. And like, something I saw on Instagram was like, it's really hard to find those people where like like you can have like a lot of friends, and only a handful of those people will be the ones who really support you and are genuinely happy for you. And I think those are the most important friendships, the ones that they're not toxic, but they instead uplift you and really like are happy for your successes. Their successes are your successes, your successes are their successes. And I do think that like genuinely those are hard to come across, especially when you're in a toxic environment, or where like competition is such a big thing, or like where everybody wants one thing, or like they're searching for like numerous things. I feel like when something's not good for you, there's always this uncomfort. There's this discomfort in your life. I also I was like listening to this person like talk about her relationship, and she was mentioning that she would get sudden anxiety attacks and panic attacks because for no reason. She wouldn't know why, and she sourced it back to her relationship. And I think like also when my roommate was talking about this, like when you're in like a for any form of relationship, friendship, romantic relationship, anything, your body feels that there's something wrong when you're not getting as much as you need or as much as you should in this like relationship. And I realized how important it is to listen to that gut feeling, that like that's something that your body is telling you, and sometimes your body feels it before you do. Like, do you guys ever get that, like that gut feeling that you guys have on like this is not okay, this is not going well, or like just something is not right? Like after you hang out with them, like you have a weird feeling, like it's not like you're not really happy, you don't feel satisfied, you don't feel like fulfillment. It's like this like weird like crawling, like gut wrenching like discomfort. I think that's like a very good indicator that, oh, maybe this is not, maybe like I need to reevaluate if this friendship is adding value as much as I need it to. Because at the end of the day, this is your life, right? Like you get to choose who you choose to be in your life. And a lot of people, I think about the opposite. Oh, I'm so grateful to be in their lives. But no, like I think you should think about it the other way. Like this is your life. Everyone should add value to your life and not deplete your happiness, like you're such a valuable human being that like your presence is just as valuable as anybody else's. And I think like sometimes it can feel pretty horrible when you're so much into this headspace of wanting to get value or wanting to get acknowledgement from others, and it becomes really really hard. And but I think like it's hard to get out. Like it's hard once you're in there and wanting to get validation to step out for a second, because you feel like you're going to lose everything around you. But I think it's not a loss of losing the things that you are holding so much onto and trying to control, because at the end of the day, I think like in life there are certain things you're not able to control, and the more that you could try to control, the more hardships it brings to you, but also to other people, and the more they're not going to want to do it. So I realized that, you know what, I need to make sure I make decisions and I bring peace to myself, like for myself and not for other people. And that's when it becomes more clear, oh, like these certain people I don't vibe with, and that's totally okay. I have other friendships I vibe with. I sometimes forget that the world is so big and I get stuck in my own little bubble, and it makes me lose sight of the fact that I'm not prioritizing myself. I'm prioritizing other people because I think they're going to add value, and because I think they're such important people in my lives, I try to hold on to them so tight when I don't even realize for myself that like, oh wait, this is doing so much harm to me. It's actually doing worse than it's making me feel worse than actually making me feel better. And I think at that point it's a net loss, and so I feel like I think it's always so difficult to like pull the trigger on things, because you think about all the times you spent without the person, or like how much happiness you brought, or like all of these like really horror stories that you put into your head about like the negative stuff that can happen if you choose your own happiness. But I think choosing your happiness is the greatest, best gift that you can ever do to yourself, because there's always going to be more happiness along that road, even if it's not what you expect it to be. And I think that's where it comes back to change, and like that change is so scary, because you feel like you're losing everything. But honestly, it's like a speck of what you see, like there's so much out there, there's so much things, that so many different people that you'll find, even like people who will like add so much more happiness to your life, and people who will root for you instead of put you down. And I think that's something that we always constantly lose sight of. And for me too, I lose sight of that, because sometimes I put too much value and emphasis on how much time I knew this person. And when I do that, I'm like, oh, I knew them for so long, like we created so much memories. They're like, it's like I cherish it so much. But also, like, sometimes you can know someone for so long, but just time changes you, like you were close back then, but you may not be close in a couple years later because, like, something I noticed is like how different we become through life. Like, life changes you and time changes you. You become very different people. Who I was in elementary school, I'm so different now. And I had like a very close friend in high school, and we went to different colleges, and so we were separated for like a really long time. And like when we would see each other, it'd be like after like a year or two, like during breaks. But life happens, and sometimes like during breaks you can't come back home, or like things happen. And like I realized when I caught up with her, like, no bad beef or anything, it's just we were at such different places in our life. We changed so much, our environments were completely different. We also have like different friend groups now, but it's so interesting how like much we changed. And it's not that like there's anything wrong with like our relationship, nothing bad happened, but it's just we're very different people. And for me, in the beginning, I kept on holding on to it because I was just like, oh, it's so deep rooted, and like we were such close friends, and we built so many things together, and we became the same person in high school. And like she was somebody I cherished so much. But it's okay to like distance. I think it's totally okay. And like in the far future, in the future, if we ever like meet again, and we we meet again, and then we catch up and we're at the same place, or like we could reconnect again, then that'll happen. But if we like continue our separate ways, that's also okay. Like, I think going separate ways isn't always a bad thing, and it doesn't mean like I don't think it means it's a bad thing at all, actually. Like, going separate ways just means we're going on our separate journeys because we're separate humans, like we're different human beings. We're becoming our own individuals. We're building our own stories. And I think that's something that's so beautiful. It's like bittersweet, like we're doing our own things, but like at the same time, we're building like building our separate stories that are just so magical. And in that period that we knew each other and we spent so much time together, that was a story that we built at that time. And that's something that I'll look back on and always be so happy about, to think about, because she was such a great friend of mine. And it doesn't lose any value, that story, that memory doesn't lose any value just because we're not friends anymore, or like because we're not as close anymore. I used to like really put a lot of emphasis on closeness with a friend, and so because I was so close to them back then, I needed to be close to them now. But I don't think it's that at all. Like, I wouldn't say she's a stranger. Like, she's still a friend. I would always catch up with her. I still care for her. It's just we're not the same people that we were back then, and as a result, we're not as close, and that is totally okay. And I think that's like life, like that's one of the beauties of life. You meet new people. So many people come into your life, some people go, but as a result, a lot of people come back in, I heard like, okay, I don't know if this is like totally relevant, and it's kind of sad when I say it now that I think about it, but I'm going to say it anyways. Sometimes for new things to come in, you have to let old things go. And I think that's just a very natural thing in relationships in general. Like, sometimes some people are there to stay, other times they're meant to go, but they go with a lesson. And I think that it's important to be able to recognize when it's time to let go of somebody too. Not everybody in your life will stay, but I think every person has a purpose in your life, and as a result of that, like, I cherish every person that comes into my life. And I think that also comes like back into boundaries, like, like every person, like, I like to think that the boundaries that you set for yourself, they are more lessons to show like how you should set boundaries and how direct you should be about these things. Because at the end of the day, like, even though it might make you feel like the worst person in the world by setting these boundaries, it only makes your relationship grow stronger. And that's something that I realized, like, by being able to be able to communicate to whoever you need to send boundaries to, you're able to build such a stronger relationship because now you guys know and how to know when and how to respect one another, and that is only going to add more value to a relationship. By respecting somebody's boundaries, you're able to respect them as a person, and I think that's something that's a very, very valuable and important thing in a relationship, respecting one another. And boundaries are one of those things that you should respect about another person. And if you can respect that, and if you can learn to respect, not only do you become and learn how to be a better version of yourself for other people, but also how to be able to receive and give those exact same boundaries that you need for yourself, you know? And like, I think just like in general, I used to also be like insanely scared to just be able to say something. Like with my roommate, I used to like be really, really scared to like say anything. And then we had like this talk. We just sat down and talked to each other about like genuine, like our true feelings. Like also it took me months. Like I was just like, oh my god, she's like, and it's crazy because my roommate is like one of my bestest friends. So like right now I'm just like, damn, like she's like such a close friend, and like I can't believe I had trouble just saying like a simple thing. Like I just had a simple request that I wanted to ask her in terms of like living together, when we were living together. And when we had this talk, it honestly revealed so much on both ends, like what she wanted from me and what I wanted from her. And it made us 10 times, like 1,000,000 times closer, because now I felt like we like broke like a wall that's between us that kept on like kind of like drifting us apart, because like we're like tiptoeing around each other. And so as a result, we're like, oh my gosh, can I say this, can I not? And so then you just end up not saying a bunch of things. But then after just having that conversation, it just like really broke down all of our walls and put us in such a more comfortable place where we're like now best friends, like we're like sisters. And I genuinely think boundaries just bring people much closer together than further apart, because if they can't respect your boundaries, one, they're not a good friend. Two, you should not be having them around because they're not a good friend. And three, like, unless it's like an absurd request, like, you know what I mean, like by absurd, you guys know what I mean by absurd. But like if it's like something like that's an insane request, like, you know, like, no, you just let them go. And I know that might be hard, but just let them go, because boundaries should always be respected. And the people who are the closest to you always know that it's okay to be able to talk about boundaries. So at the end of the day, it's like a win-win for you. One, you either know they're not for you, or two, you become closer because they know how to respect your boundaries. Or three, which is also a win, is that they respect you so much more, and you become and build a stronger relationship because now they know what not to do and they know you better. You know, like it's just a win-win, and you just learn more about your relationship and what they also want, what you want. And it's like, who doesn't want a relationship like that, right? But let me tell you, I know that it's like so hard to even fathom this, like, because me, if somebody told me that, like, I would always tell, like, yeah, it's so much easier said than done. Like, I don't know how to just say freaking no. Like, just no. But also, I realized that it's always all in your head. Usually, they're like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, sure, whatever. Like, I can totally do that. And I'm like here overthinking, like, oh my gosh, they're gonna hate me. Oh my gosh, what if they actually, like, this is the only option, like they asked me this for a reason, and they asked me because they really trusted me, and blah blah blah. And like, what if, like, you know, like all of these what ifs, it's like really dumb what ifs. It's like, you know, like when you go into a spiral and you keep on spiraling and spiraling and spiraling. And I'm like a big overthinker, so when I think about these possibilities, I'm like, oh no, they probably asked me because they really needed it. Or like, I don't know, I just think some like illogical, irrational stuff that like enters my head, and then I end up just doing it. But then, like, little do I know, it's just probably just not a big deal, and I'm just making it a big deal, which I tend to usually do. And so if that's the case, it could also be a personality thing like me, but also it could be the case where, like, if they're genuinely making you question and making you feel bad about everything, you could be like me. Okay, pause. You can be like me and like just overthink every single thing, no matter who they are. It's like a me problem, like. And then if it's that case, then I think like just like everything I was just saying, like remember, like reevaluate everything that you're thinking, and just like sometimes you just need to take a pause, take a step back, and be like, okay, you're overthinking. That's okay, and I need to do what's best for me. I'm gonna just stop my thinking, and I know I don't like this, so I'm gonna just do it and communicate. But in the other case of like, if like it's just like not a you thing and it's a them thing, you just should trust your gut. You should trust your gut and like move forward with it, because I think your gut is always right. And also, like either way, if it's a miscommunication or if it's not something, like if it's like something that like, I don't know, if it's just like is not rational or anything, like you can just talk to your friends about it and they'll be able to communicate. You guys can have a big long session about like how, like just being transparent and then work things out, like either way, I think just communication is really key about setting boundaries. At the end of the day, you seriously do not have an obligation to anybody to do something forcefully or to not do something that you don't like, like there's no obligation at the end of the day. Like a relationship, friendship, anything, like boundaries exist because you like to grow your self-respect, to remember who you are, to love yourself, and to be able to love the other person while loving yourself. Like we're all very different people, we're all unique, we're all individuals, and we all have separate needs. And in this world, it's so hard to find somebody who's identical. If they're identical to you, they're like like they're your clone. Not even twins are like identical, no one ever is identical. But that's why relationships become stronger, and because they're so beautiful, is because everybody's so different, and you learn how to adapt to somebody. You learn how to make like better, bigger relationships. Do you know what I mean? There was a slight intermission, so sorry if the video angle is a little bit different. As somebody who never knew what boundaries look like and how they're reflected upon in a relationship, I want to emphasize how important it is to learn about it and to try to act upon it, because I noticed how much it reflected within my relationships, especially romantic relationships. And I think something that's really important, something that's a really important life skill to learn, is how to be compassionate, selfless, kind, and warm. Balancing that with having boundaries and self-respect. And I think I never knew how to have both, but I realized you can have both, and there's a very distinct difference between those two things. And just because they're different doesn't mean that they can coexist. They can't coexist. And I think the first step is to just do it. Act on it, be direct, and focus, and remember that you are your priority and nobody else's. And if you don't step up for yourself, no one else will. I think that's something I also really, really learned, that you can't expect others to read your mind or understand what boundaries you need if you don't communicate it. And communicating is the first step of that action of setting these boundaries. And it took me like many years to learn. And you know what? I was delusional in the process of trying to learn it and just being like, this is just who I am. But it's very, very clear that you can be compassionate, nice, giving without losing your own self-respect. I think as somebody who also experienced what it meant to not have self-respect or lose that, and as a result have people step on you, like it's so easy to continue to let it happen because you don't even realize it's happening. And honestly, you just keep on making excuses and excuses for these people. There comes a point where you need to put your foot on the ground, and that is honestly, you know what? I was talking to my friend about this, but it's surprisingly so much harder than you think. Like I was like, me and her were like thinking like, damn, we really had zero self-respect. We had absolute zero self-respect, and things that we were expecting of others, bare minimum, guys. When I mean bare minimum, like the bottom of the barrel. Not even, you can't even see it. You can't even see the bottom that we were expecting. And it's crazy because once we set boundaries, it was literally the bare minimum. And I think once you get into the habit of like accepting bare minimum, even the bare minimum seems so extravagant. And how absurd is that? Seriously, like, don't even, that's another episode where I'll be talking about self-respect, bare minimum. But for right now, I just want to make sure that I communicate that, like, at the end of the day, these boundaries that you're setting always strengthen your relationships and not hurt it. And being able to strengthen your relationship with others, but more importantly within yourself, and giving you that self-love. And I think that's what's one of the most important lessons that boundaries have taught me, and why boundaries are so important no matter how hard it is. And the things that are always hard are not going to always feel good. In the moment they're not going to feel good, but they're what's best for you. And sometimes doing the things that are hard, even if it hurts you a little bit in the beginning, is ultimately what is going to benefit you in the long run, even if you can't see that now. And that's why I always say, just always prioritize yourself, because for the right people, it's not going to hurt anybody. And if you keep on letting people step on you, it's going to only hurt you. But remember, you are the main character in your own story. You are your own individual, and you are what makes your story so special. And because you are the main character, without you, the story wouldn't exist, right? So ultimately, do things for yourself, have self-love, and set those boundaries. Like how people think niceness is like a red flag. Like, if you're too nice, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, do you guys ever like look at somebody and be like, wow, they're like just a bit too nice, like just a tad bit too nice? You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Like, to the point where it's just like, damn, is that a real person? But I don't know if you guys ever felt this, but like sometimes, like, I don't know if you guys ever felt this, but I was just like, I was talking to my friend and we're like, isn't it kind of annoying that they're a little bit too nice? Like, I don't know how to explain it, but like, when it's to the point where there's no opinion, like they don't have an opinion about anything, or like, I'm not even talking about just niceness in just like they're giving or compassionate. I think I don't know, I separate those into two categories. Sometimes like their niceness is a little bit too overwhelming, and I'm like, oh, they're a little bit too nice. There is a very negative connotation on being too nice, and sometimes like niceness, like being too nice, can be considered a red flag. And it's so weird because like I had a friend who, so like there was this friend group, and like he was the only one without a girlfriend, and I was like, this man deserves a girlfriend because he is like the best man in the entire universe. And then we were all thinking like, maybe it's because he's too nice. But then I was just like, no, like this is what I'm talking about. This is like a walking green flag. And sometimes girls, when I talk to my girlfriends too, they're like, oh, it's a red flag when they're too nice. And I'm like, these are the guys that you should be attracted to because they're not toxic. But then I remember that I used to say, like when I was young, I used to be like, yeah, if they're too nice, it's kind of a red flag, because I find it slightly unattractive when they're like a bit too nice. They need to have some like, like, not like, okay, so like I'm not asking this guy to have like red flags like toxic, like, or like texting me every like once a day, or like, or like mean, rude, or like annoying to other people, like very like obnoxious to other people. That's not what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about, that like natural pull that you have to somebody who has like a little bit of like charisma, like they have a little tad bit of charisma, and it's not like too innocent, but then they have like the perfect amount. You know what I'm saying? Like that, like kind of small, that attracted pull that you have towards people. And like I feel like when you're like so nice, like you don't have that. you know, is it just me? Hmm. Maybe it's just me, but I don't know. I have this like opinion, like sometimes, like especially when I was younger, I was like, oh, I don't really like too nice people. But even like now, I don't know if it's because my exes weren't all like, they weren't the like nicest people. You know, like the guys who are nice to you but not nice to anybody else, kind of thing. Like, but they're not like rude to anybody else, but they like specifically hold like special attraction towards you versus other people. I don't know if that made sense. But like maybe that's my delusions talking, or maybe that's like bare minimum. I don't know. What do you guys think? Is that bare minimum? But like anyways, yeah. So why I was saying like these red flag things was because like, is being too nice like a weakness, do you guys think? Like, do you think like in this world society being too nice is like people can take advantage of you? Because I do think they're like genuinely like amazing nice people, and they just know how to set their boundaries. Maybe that's the thing. It's just like people are nice but need to know how to set boundaries, because I do think like sometimes if you're so nice, you know, like when you're like way too nice, like you subconsciously, like I see this all the time. Like sometimes like I have like really like if I have a really nice friend, I see subconsciously that other people utilize their niceness, but not like purposely. It's just because they're so nice, you just tend to lean on those people more often. Do you know what I mean? Like instead of like, because you know that they'll say yes, you purposely go to that person because you know like you have the intentions of you need something, and like you ask them versus another person. You know what I mean? And I think like I feel like people target certain people. Like sometimes I feel targeted about certain things because they know I'm gonna say yes. I'm just like, huh, is this like because we're friends, or is this because I'm too nice, or is this because you need help and you just want to ask me because you actually need help? You know what I mean? Like, is there like a difference? I don't know. But I do know that I do think sometimes being too nice is taken advantage of. And I do notice that a lot. And I think I've experienced that a lot too. But yeah, and I'm still trying to figure those things out. I think being nice is such a great strength. Like I love nice people. Like when I go to, like when I went to Utah, guys, like Utah, like I think it was Utah. Was it Utah? I don't remember, but it was like, no, I think it was Utah. No, it wasn't Utah. Oregon. It was Oregon, guys. It was Oregon. So when I went to Oregon, I don't know which, if Oregon is like this. Let me know if Oregon is just like this. The whole state is like this. But like, I went to a specific part in Oregon, and guys, everybody was so freaking nice. I have never met such nice people. Like they have such good customer service. Like I'd walk in and then they would like compliment me. They're like, "Oh my gosh, you're so pretty. Oh my gosh, I love your makeup. You did like they would like, how are you? How are you doing?" Like they would just like they had really good mannerisms, and I was just so blown away because it wasn't okay. I thought maybe it was just that one shop. No, I was there for like a couple days. Every single shop I, so nice. They were like insanely nice. And I'm like really like something that really like, I don't know, it's a landmark in my head, or like what makes me really love a place is based on the people. Like New York people are like kind of mean, and they're like really straightforward, and I'm like, "Oh, whoa, what did I do?" And then I was just told like that's how New York people talk. Like they're just like really direct, and I just have to get used to it. And it doesn't make me hate New York because I love New York, but I just like to like rate my experiences based on the people I meet. And Oregon, guys, so nice. Like I don't know what was in the air. Maybe it was that day or those couple of days I was there, but like so nice. Just really love nice people. Like those, I love Oregon, but I just like literally, I did not, okay, being so for real, I did not like Oregon that much because it was just so full of nature, and I was just like, I got really bored. And I'm not really like, I am a nature person, but not to the point where I just didn't feel, I'm a city girl. I'm a city girl. But I do have to admit, Oregon has like really nice people. That really made my trip. Anyways, that is all for my like whole like session, and I don't know how I got to Oregon, but Yeah. So we're gonna move on to the psychology fact of this week, and something that I wanted to talk about, which related to like the social atmosphere and like the people that you're with, and like social comparison, friends that are not happy for you, and just like all of those things that are related to self-esteem. There's many meta-analytic studies that show self-esteem is one of the top predictors of happiness, and self-esteem as in like you're bragging yourself or flaunting or being a narcissist, but things that you are very proud of internally, and you have like a high self-esteem, and that you are proud of yourself, you have a lot of self-love for yourself, is very correlated with happiness. And it's one of the strong, I think it's like the fourth or fifth predictor of happiness. I could be wrong. I know the first predictor of happiness is social connection. So it is really important to have social connections in your life. It increases your happiness. And on the opposite end, negative self-esteem is one of the biggest predictors of negative affect. So all of these unhappy emotions, like negative feelings that you have about yourself or like about others or about the world. In addition, social comparison is also highly correlated with negative affects. So the more you compare yourself with others, the more unhappy you feel, or all of these negative emotions are spiraling. And that really goes back to say that, like, when you are setting boundaries and when you try to compare yourself with others about like what they have versus what you have, and it creates this unhappy cycle of like, oh, you want to be more like a certain person, or you're trying to fit into these groups because of these thoughts and these images that you have about how you might be happier. It actually creates a negative effect of like actually not being happy, and you just end up, you just feel worse about yourself. And just in general, people who are less happier end up comparing themselves more to people who you want to be, or people that you tend to want to gravitate towards, and that just creates a very unhealthy negative feedback loop. This is one of the reasons why I was talking about how friends who are truly who are truly your friends are people who would be happy for you. And yeah, so that is the psychology fact of the day, and I think it like goes back to all the things I was talking about how it's important to build your self-esteem and that have pride in your own self. You are your main character, like you are so beautiful, you are so valued, and you should be around people who value those exact same like things that you have in your life and are happy for you, and that in general creates so much happiness. And having people around you, having the people that really cherish you and love you, and having the right people because they have all of these positive characteristics that you really admire and have things that really add value to your life, just add so much happiness. These are all the things that are really correlated with happiness. So yeah, I hope that fact kind of like helped a little bit, or it was just an interesting fact. If it wasn't interesting, well, you know, it was a fact that you can like share if you guys want to share, or just to keep in mind. But that is all for today's episode. I really hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I hope to see you guys next week on Wednesday. Stay tuned for next week's episode. Bye guys, have an amazing week.